Welcome everybody. You're watching the Acquisition Council, a monthly show that takes a deep dive in the private vehicle acquisition strategies, best practices, and technologies that'll help your dealership evolve its in-market efforts. Today we'll be discussing profit potential in private vehicle acquisitions. Later I'll be joined with Tom and Mark from the Vehicle Acquisition Network. Now listen, Tom and Mark are two of the most versed and knowledgeable subject matter experts on private vehicle acquisitions and auto remarketing. Today's topic will definitely be useful for our used car managers out there. So have a seat, dig in, let's have some great conversations with Vehicle Acquisition Network. Great to see you guys again.
Good to see you.
You know, last time when we were talking, you alluded to a lot of world travel. Tell me a little bit about that before we get started. I just want to hear some of these really great places that you've been.
I had the great fortune of working for a company that did a lot of work with OEMs, and having come from a retail dealership environment, I find that dealerships and dealership partners often value someone who has walked in their shoes in the past. So I worked for a company and was embedded with several manufacturers, including BMW, International Truck, and Ford Motor Company. So one of the things that I have found is no matter where in my travels I've gone, the same three things apply every time. So that's we're in the business to sell vehicles, sell parts, and sell service. And the model remains the same whether you're in Belgium, Austria, England, or the United States. Often we believe that the nuances of our markets are something that's holding us back or chaining us down, but the reality is every dealership deals with some type of market nuance that's very specific to their geography.
Sure. I love travel, but I've never really traveled the world quite like that. So if anybody knows about this stuff, it'd be you, I'm guessing.
It would be us, the whole team. So I can't take credit for that.
Well, that's smart. I appreciate that. So we're going to start off with a heavy, hot question. Inventory. So what are some of the topics that the dealers and OEMs are all talking about? And what are you hearing through some of your peer groups about the shortage?
It's real. The shortage is real. So when you consider the impact of missing as many millions of new vehicles from the market as we did last year, and forecasting what this year looks like, it's going to be a rough year for new cars. So microchips are in shortage. Now we have wiring harnesses out of Ukraine. So by and large, there's a number of things that are impacting new vehicle sales, and it's simply that the cars aren't there. And that impacts the used. So if you don't have the new, you don't have the used. You have consumers that would like to sell their cars because they're worth, in some cases, more than they paid. But if they buy a car, if they sell their car rather, they often need to replace it with something else.
Right.
And so if there's not a replacement vehicle. So I have friends and family that have talked about selling their car, but they can't because the car that they would replace it with, the dealer doesn't have. Yeah. So there's a number of factors that are impacting the used vehicles. You look at insurance companies, so they don't have cars. I remember a few months ago I rented a car in San Francisco, and I got in the vehicle and I put it in reverse, and there was no backup camera. Now in 2019 it was required in all vehicles that are sold, that all new vehicles sold as of January 1st of 2019, that a standard feature for safety is a backup camera. So that means the car that I was driving was older than 2019.
Yeah.
So, and this was, I don't recall the line of...
When was this? How long ago was
this?
This
was a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
And so the the rental car companies don't have inventory either. And as they are taking cars out, many of them are selling on their own respective lots. Some are working directly with companies like Carvana. So these vehicles that used to come out of rental car fleet and go either to the auction or directly to dealers, those cars aren't there either. So dealers have a number of pressures where they don't have new cars. Used cars are hard to find. They don't have customers coming in to buy new cars to replace them. So the shortage in used cars is very real.
What have you been hearing in some of your peer networking groups about this shortage? Is it real?
It's real. There's no
Like you
question
said.
about it. No question about it. In addition to what Tom said, in terms of just the lack of wiring harnesses or lack of microchips that we've seen, we all know that there's been a tremendous supply chain disruption as well. That's also slowing inventory down, especially for imported vehicles specifically. And now what we see as a result of the pandemic, a labor shortage. So there are fewer people available to deliver the vehicles, fewer people available to work in the dealership. So it's caused pain points all the way through, the inventory transgression, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel that dealers are suffering negatively in other areas of a dealership because of the shortage?
I would say yes. New car inventory or new vehicle inventory brings with it a lot of benefits for a dealership and a manufacturer. So when there is a plentiful new vehicle inventory, then there's also plentiful OEM captive finance contracts, warranties, and any number of other products that are tied to new vehicles.
Yeah.
But the short term, though, many dealers, all dealers that I talk to, their profits and profit margins
Making
are
money.
significantly higher
Yeah.
than they ever have been.
Yeah.
And what used to be an average per car now is a multiple of that. So in the short term, while there's a shortage, the overall volume is down, the profits are up. And OEMs, when in the past they would have to incentivize through finance incentives these lures to be able to get the buyers to purchase the vehicles.
Yeah.
Without having that incentive, they're able to sell the cars. So the per vehicle profit on the new car side is up dramatically for
Yeah.
new car manufacturers.
What's interesting, I make a lot of commercials in the automotive industry. And a lot of my clients aren't making commercials because they don't have to.
Yeah.
They're like, listen, we're selling cars and we're making a lot of money. I have a couple that still stick around. We're doing some fun stuff. But a lot of them aren't even making commercials, which is interesting. Okay, so do you feel that some dealers, however, are missing the boat in profitability somewhere within the dealership?
I would say yes, there's a tremendous opportunity, as we were just talking about new vehicle inventory, for vehicle acquisition network dealers. Checking their markets, we often encourage them to look for specialized units that might be certified pre-owned eligible so that you could purchase a unit. We know that loyalists, so if you were a Toyota dealer, for example, finding those Toyota vehicles in your market are already Toyota loyalists or whatever brand that you're talking about, we would encourage dealers to acquire those units competitively because it brings with them an opportunity, especially those within that search criteria that would be eligible for certified pre-owned, to enroll it in a CPO, which would bring the benefits of a warranty for the customer, financing both for the dealership and the customer, in terms of benefits that would help soften the impact of a lack of new vehicle inventory in the dealership.
As dealers are finding the benefits in the private acquisition, what are some of the common pain points they're experiencing as they're going through this process, as they're trying to spin up their buying strategies?
The biggest pain point we see is that buying cars from consumers is very hard. In fact, it's a lot harder to buy cars from consumers than it is to sell cars. So when you look at consumers that come into the dealership showroom, they've already researched the car. They already know what the dealer has in stock, in most cases before they arrive.
Yeah.
So the intention that the consumer that shows up in the store, the intentionality is typically to purchase a car. So, and as that contrasts to dealers that buy cars from consumers that are selling their car for sale by owner, they went to the effort of posting a vehicle on Craigslist or Facebook or some other site. They know that the dealers are in the market. In most cases, they know that dealers are willing to buy cars. They know that they have options like Carvana or CarMax, but they chose to go the route of selling it to another peer or consumer, in most cases so that they can get more money than what Carvana, CarMax, or a dealer may offer. So for a dealer to contact and engage with that consumer, oftentimes that's a challenging engagement. And so the pain points that we often see are dealers that engage and then give up after the first attempt. So either you buy it or you don't. So what we encourage dealers to do is to push past, to follow up. So the pain points that often are seen is that it's really hard to buy cars from consumers. And the feedback we often hear is the cars are priced way too high. All these cars are too expensive. And we find that the average delta between the purchase price and advertised price can be $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
And that's just par for the course. It's $3,000 or $4,000 difference between what a seller asks and what they will actually transact for.
Sure.
But you often have to engage and follow up and stick with the seller in order to get to that point that they're willing to transact with you.
Yeah. Yeah. What Same? Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would say that that's a really important point. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would also say that we really spend a lot of time with our dealer partners before launching in setup and strategy. And some of the most simple things, or the things that would appear to be simple, are the important ones. So I think we were discussing getting a check cut. To have that plan in mind in advance, to make sure that you're encouraging our partners to meet with their controllers, to ensure that we can compete with some of the big box names that Tom just referenced, in terms of being able to produce that check for a customer in a very short period of time. That's become the customer expectation, and that's also the seller expectation.
How would you define an optimized private buyer strategy that would enhance their profit potential for a dealer?
I would say that it's a number of different things that you have to do, right? So as Tom mentioned, follow-up is absolutely critical. If you are offering one single time to a consumer or a private seller, you more than likely are not reaching 50% of the acquisitions that you would be able to if you were to institute a 4 to 7 point follow-up process. So you're leaving a lot of money and a lot of vehicles out there if you're not following up on a regular basis. I think that's probably the single most important point.
Yeah.
I would say an optimized acquisition strategy is one that's documented. So the dealer has written down what steps they follow. And this way, if you have something documented, it's easy to determine if somebody's not following the process or if they are following the process. Now, if it's conversational, one person may do something very different from another one. And the only way that you can actually improve and get better is if you've documented it, identify where somebody's either on or off, and you may make some changes from there. You also may find that the steps that you have verbally are excessive and too many, and that you can actually condense some things and get more of what you want with fewer steps by writing it down. And as Mark said, follow up. So an optimized strategy is one that is documented. In most cases, it's one that has somebody that specializes and
Sure.
focuses on buying cars from consumers. When we have dealers that will have salespeople or somebody that will dabble in it and then dabble in something else. The dabbling often leads to the path of least resistance, where the individual, and many times will go to the thing that's easier
Sure.
and get more of an outcome and less. But